Everyone has moments in life when they feel humiliated or deeply wounded or wronged. For me, it was a time I faced betrayal from a close friend, someone in whom I trusted deeply. The ordeal left a deep emotional scar in me. For a long time after that, I carried the weight of anger, convincing myself that the anger gave me power, that holding on to it was my way of reclaiming control. But instead, it left me feeling empty, drained of joy, my energy, and even my sense of self. Then I encountered a story about Nelson Mandela, a story that helped me shift my perspective in ways that I couldn't have imagined. Now, he definitely is one of my heroes. But imagine this. After spending 27 years in prison, separated from his family, enduring brutal treatment, and being labeled a terrorist by his oppressors, he refused to let anyone else define him or his struggle. After being released from prison, he was dining one day at a restaurant with his security team when he spotted a familiar face at a nearby table. Without hesitation, he invited the man over to join them. There they shared a meal, exchanged polite conversation, a few laughs, and then parted on warm terms. After the man left, Mandela revealed a shocking truth to his team. He described the years he spent behind bars, not just confined by steel bars, but by the hatred and brutality of his captors under apartheid. He spoke of moments when his thirst and exhaustion were unbearable. Times he would beg for just a sip of water, only to be met by a guard who would brutally humiliate him, instead by urinating on his head. That guard, Mandela explained, was the very man who had just shared their table. Imagine the weight of that moment, the indignity, the isolation, the relentless cruelty that he suffered. Think of the pain Mandela must have felt physically and in his heart, knowing that others took pleasure in his humiliation and suffering. Now, the guard likely expected some form of retaliation, but Mandela's response wasn't vengeance. It wasn't bitterness. Instead, he chose forgiveness. Let that sink in. Forgiveness for someone who had tried to strip him of his dignity and humanity. Imagine the personal power required to sit across from the man who once tormented him, to look him in the eye and relinquish the past. Now, what struck me most wasn't just Mandela's act of forgiveness. It wasn't just an act of kindness. It was a declaration of freedom. By not giving in to hatred, he ensured that his captors could no longer dictate his story. His choice shows us that forgiveness is not about forgetting or excusing. It's about reclaiming your power, reclaiming our power. Now, despite the 27 years of atrocious captivity, he reclaimed his story. Now that, friends, is what owning your story looks like. Our lives are often feel like they're being written by forces beyond our control, by circumstances or by other people's decisions, even by our own experiences of pain and fear. It's easy to believe the story is already set, that we're merely characters playing out a script. What if that's not true? What if it isn't true? What if even in our darkest moments, we still have the power to shape what happens next? Many people feel like life is happening to them. They feel trapped by the systems, by relationships or personal struggles that define their lives. But what if the power to turn the page lies within us, within each of us? What if this very moment, what if every single moment you hold an invitation to take control of your story within your hands and heart? Mandela took control of his narrative. He showed us that we all have the power to shape our story. And friends, freedom means that the next chapter is unwritten, and you get to help write it. The choice to rise above suffering and shape the new chapter of our story is one we all have the power to make. Now, there are some folks who believe that nothing happens by chance and that God orchestrates every moment of life, from major events to seemingly minor details, like who wins a sports game and who wins elections, who gets sick, and so on. Now, which for some folk, it can provide a sense of meaning and purpose, even in suffering, so I get that. An often told story from the 19th century is of a well-known Universalist minister who one Sunday morning was exchanging pulpits with a Calvinist colleague who believed in predestination. As the story goes, they passed on the road that Sunday morning on their way to each other's church on horseback. The Calvinist minister yelled out as they passed, "You see, my friend, it's all been predestined." Upon hearing this, the Universalist minister said, "Oh, no, it hasn't." And he turned his horse around and rode back to his own church to deliver the message. Of course, some see God as a partner who creates the world and steps back, not to abandon creation, but to allow it the freedom to unfold. And yet there are others who see no role for God, viewing the universe as governed by natural laws. And for them, meaning and purpose come from human creativity, resilience, relationships, and values guided by reason and compassion. Most of you here. But no matter which perspective speaks to you, the truth remains. Hardships and the often unexpected challenges are part of life. In other words, we're all going to go through hell and high water. The real question is, how do we respond to hardships? How do we respond to the difficulties? Our response not only shapes the story we live, but also determines the role we play within it. Author Donald Miller, in his book, Hero on a Mission, describes these roles vividly. Every story has key characters that define its journey. According to Miller, there's the victim, held captive by circumstance, always waiting for someone to come save them. The victim feels they have no control or agency over their life, happiness, or well-being. It's someone else's fault. Then there's the villain who allows bitterness to take root and turns pain into harm. Hurt people hurt. The villain makes other people feel small in order to make themselves feel big. They're big on getting revenge, sticking it to their opponents. And I want to say that some victims like to write people like you and me into their story as villains. But me being a black gay preacher, I'm someone's villain. I'm someone's enemy. They wrote me into their story. I'm what's wrong with the world. But just as they wrote me into their story, they can write me out, because I will be nobody's villain in their story. Now, if I was in the first service of the Baptist church, someone would have said amen on that one. But you don't have to. This is the point. No amens. No amen corner here. But I will be no one's villain in their story. Because of who you are, you might be someone's villain in their story. But if I have to be your villain in your story, in your B story script, then you need to write it, change it up, and make it a blockbuster, because I'm going to play that role to win an Oscar. Yes, I'm going to be your villain. I'm going to march. I'm going to stand. I'm going to resist. But I am no one's enemy, and I don't want to be no one's victim or villain. But I digress. That's not in my script. I went off script. But it was my script to leave, right? The victim, the villain, and then there's the hero. The hero is one who faces challenges head on, wrestles with the obstacles in their path, learns invaluable lessons along the way, and emerges not just stronger, but transformed. Then finally, there's the guide, the one who draws from their own trials and triumphs to illuminate the path of others. Now, we all play these roles at different times in our lives, often without even noticing it. When a setback shakes us or a difficulty shakes us, it's easy to feel like the victim. Then pain and hurt, and someone does something to us, and we become the villain. But the real transformation begins when we step into the role of the hero, when we face the facts of our lives and respond with courage. Then, if we met life with courage, we can be a guide for others, using what we've learned to make a difference in someone else's story. Take Mandela, for example. He could have been a victim or let pain turn him into a villain. Instead, he rose above hatred and became the hero of his life, transforming his suffering into a message of hope and reconciliation. In doing so, he also became a guide, showing others how to live with dignity and purpose, even in the face of injustice. This mindset helps us to turn the page and reshape our stories. But it's crucial. It's crucial to recognize the difference between adopting the victim mentality versus experiencing real victimhood. There are real victims, so I wanted to make sure I acknowledge that. Those forced into concentration camps during the Holocaust, those caught in wars like what's happening in Ukraine and Syria or Palestine, or those who are surviving human trafficking, did not choose their suffering. These are all conditions and circumstances that demand justice, compassion, and action. But while acknowledging genuine suffering is vital, so is reclaiming our power whenever and wherever we can. As Brené Brown reminds us, owning our story can be hard, but not nearly as difficult as spending our lives running from it. Turning the page requires facing our truths with honesty and a commitment to move forward. But I have to admit, turning the page isn't always easy or graceful. Sometimes it's more like trying to flip the page of a book while wearing gloves, and I'm going to try that. Is it up there on that video? Yeah, I'm going to try it myself. Somebody gave me these gloves, and they're too small, so they won't fit on my hand, but I'm going to try to turn this page. See, I'm going to learn how to do it. I'm going to turn one page at a time. And right now it's 5 pages. Huh? Oh, God. Someone said I got to lick it. Someone told me that in the first service. I was like, why am I licking my glove? I ain't licking my glove. I don't know where that glove's been. But someone told me that. That might work. But the point is, we keep finding ways. We keep coming up with ideas on how to get it done. We never give up. Turning the page requires action. Even the small intentional steps that give it meaning and momentum count. And we can start small by perhaps just reaching out to someone you've been avoiding, apologizing for a mistake, or setting aside time for self-reflection. We can choose to see a difficult situation with fresh eyes. Or it could be as simple as asking yourself each morning, what's the one thing I can do to live in alignment with the story I want to tell? Miller suggests an exercise that caught my attention while I was reading and meditating. It involved, now listen to this, it involved writing my own eulogy. At first, it felt, well, a little morbid, I'll give you that. But as a minister, I spend a lot of time talking about life and legacy. So I thought this is gonna be smooth, this is gonna be easy. But I will tell you, it wasn't as straightforward as I imagined. Sitting down to write about how I'd want to be remembered made me pause. It wasn't just about listing accomplishments and virtues. It was about reflecting on the kind of person I am right now and the kind of person I still want to become. It forced me to confront whether I'm truly living into the values I say matter most to me. You know, the love, compassion, service, courage. There were moments that I felt a little uncomfortable, even humbling. I realized there's a gap between the legacy I hope to leave and the story I'm living sometimes. But that's where the power of this exercise comes in. While there is still life in me, I get the chance to examine it. I still get a chance to shift the narrative and grow into the person I want to be. This practice isn't about fixating on the end of life, but rather about clarifying what truly matters and ensuring we live in alignment with the legacy we hope to leave behind. And if I was in the first service, I would hear. We need to come up with our own word, okay? Don't have to be amen. It has to be something else. All right. So be it. I like that. But it's not about the end. It's about the present, on how we choose to spend the time we've been given, and what number of days ahead are still ours to claim. For me, it's become less about the what and more about the how. How am I showing up in my relationships? How am I investing in the people and the causes that matter most to me? How am I creating something meaningful, not just for myself, but for those who will come after me, for my daughter, for my grandbaby? This connects closely to what we've been talking about today. Writing your eulogy isn't about preparing for the end. It's about deciding how to live fully in the now, right now. It's about asking, what story am I telling with my life? And is it the one I want to be remembered by? And if it's not, what needs to change to make it so? I'd encourage you to to try writing your own eulogy. And if you need some help, you can call me. I've got some experience with it. I promise you, it's not as daunting as it sounds. And who knows, you might discover something about yourself that inspires you to turn the page and start writing a new chapter in your story. Reflecting on how we want to live and be remembered can be especially meaningful when we consider what we've been through, the weight of the challenges we faced, both individually and collectively. For many of us, this past year has been a heavy year. We've faced challenges that felt insurmountable, watched dreams slip further out of reach, and at times it felt like our hope was gone. But I promise you that with every chapter, when every chapter closes, a new one is about to open. So are you ready to turn the page? Are you done with 2024? I know I am. Now, some of us may need to take off those gloves. But that means we need to stop seeing ourselves as the victim and to stop letting the obstacles and disappointments have the final word in our lives. So let's turn the page. And if you don't mind obliging me, body motion, can I see you just turn the page? You're turning the invisible, metaphorical page, all right? So oblige me, if you will. You're turning the page. We'll just turn the page on anger and self-doubt, old habits and toxic patterns and relationships we keep falling into. So let's turn the page again. This time we turn the page on regret and shame. No more looking back, no more dwelling on the past, those old narratives that never change. The past is gone. It's time for a new story. So let's turn the page. We turn the page on fear of what the future holds, even fear of what January 20th might bring. We turn the page. Come on, turn the page with me if you don't mind, all right? Turn the page on division, on the us versus them mindset. Baby, we are in this together. We all are in this together. So let's turn the page. We turn the page on indifference, bigotry, and hatred, and all the things that cause harm to others and to ourselves. It's time to choose love, understanding, and compassion instead. So we turn the page, and this time we turned it on ingratitude. Life is short. Look around at the blessings you already have and the opportunities you can embrace right now. So let's turn the page together. Because our stories are never lived alone. Our choices, actions, and even mistakes ripple out, affecting those around us in ways we might not see. Sometimes those ripples bring healing, a kind word or a helping hand, and other times those ripples bring challenges and a harsh word or a moment of pain. This connection is both a privilege and a responsibility. How we live our stories doesn't just shape us. It influences the larger story we're all writing together. So when we turn the page, we can inspire others to do the same, just as Mandela did. None of us truly thrive until we all do. And I'll repeat that. None of us truly thrive until we all do. As a community, we have the power to turn the page together. We can rise above division, fear, and toxic patterns by choosing love, understanding, and compassion. We can become heroes, not just in our own lives, but in the lives of those around us. The next chapter, my friends, is ours to write. And though we may not control the ending, the beauty lies in how we live the story right now. I want you to take a moment, if you will. Close your eyes if you're comfortable. Picture the story of your life. Your life as a story written in a book, with everything that's already happened in the pages that we've already turned. All the hurt, the fear, the mistakes, all the triumphs and trials and traumas. Now imagine yourself turning the page one more time. Feel the weight of it shift. And see a blank page before you. What will you write on it? Now take a deep breath. And when you're ready, open your eyes. That's the story you get to live starting today.
Love will guide us. Peace has tried us. There's hope inside us, and it will lead the way on the road from grief to giving. Love will guide us through the hard night.